When I turn 60, what is the purpose? How do I see myself in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What contribution can I continue to make?
I just really need right now to let go of all the inhibitions, the sense of propriety, the fears of getting it wrong. I just need to let that go now, because if I get anything wrong right now, who cares? I'm 60 years old. So I now turning 60, I don't have to be so trapped in all the social norms.
Everything else that I can do, someone else can do. The only thing that no one can do is be a father.
When your son is 21, or like my son is turning 22 now, suddenly they don't need you. And their natural development process is to individuate from you, is to push you away. Seen it. I've seen this cycle. I've seen this cycle. It's just really like that. In politics, you're up, you're down. He meant politics. But I think he meant about life, that he's seen enough about life to know that what seems so unbearable at this moment can pass.
Hi, this is Senior Moments with Louie Montalbo, a podcast where we talk about matters about aging that truly matter. During our second episode, we were discussing about the elderly and those who are growing older, and we cited a study that said that there are two things that are important to people who are growing old. One is to maintain or to have certain connections with other people, and the second one is about making a contribution. In the second episode, we talked about the difficulty and the challenges of older people maintaining connections with other people. In some instances, their loved ones or their friends pass away or die, or sometimes physically it becomes more and more difficult for them to be in touch with other people, particularly their friends and their loved ones and other people around them. We talked about how this might cause loneliness and despair for these people who are growing older. For this episode, we will tackle the second point that was discussed by that study about making a contribution. I remember when I turned 60, I began to ask questions that I was asking myself when I was younger. When I was young, I had the notion that questions like, what is the meaning of life? What difference can I make? What contribution should I have to the world? Are questions that are really within the purview of the young. I didn't realize when I turned 60 that I found myself asking the same questions over and over again. The questions remain, but my gut sense was telling me that the answers are a bit different. I look around my friends who are also the same age as I am, and many of them have retired, many of them have children that have been are grown up already. They are already experiencing what we call an empty nest syndrome, and many of them just find themselves traveling and doing their charity work. I think I'm in a unique situation because even if I'm 61, turning 62 this year, I still have an 11-year-old son that will take a few more years before he finishes his college degree. I'm also still part of an education system where the nature of our institution is that the older you are, the more precious your contribution is, and you're not easily retired because you enter the age of seniority. So, in that case, between those two things, I do find myself doing a lot of things that other people my age might not be doing anymore. But it didn't stop me from asking the question when I turn 60, what is the purpose? How do I see myself in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What contribution can I continue to make? To be able to grapple with this question, we decided to invite a very good friend of mine, Mercado Alcantara, just to be able to help me deal with some of the questions that I'm asking. Anne is an entrepreneur. She's the owner and manager of Casa and Pablo, a bed and breakfast place in San Pablo City, which is where we're actually shooting this particular podcast, this particular episode. She's a mother to a boy who's 21, 22 years old, a wife to her husband Boots, a writer, an artist, and she's been involved in many kinds of book publications as well. So, Anne, thank you very much for gracing this your first guest for this podcast. So, thank you very much. And when I thought of discussing this particular topic of finding purpose, I immediately thought of you, even if you are not yet at that point of being a senior. How many more years?
This year. I
This year.
turned 60 this year, so the timing is right. I have a few more months, but the timing is right. So welcome to Casa San Pablo. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. As I was saying a while ago, for me, when I turned 60, the questions of finding purpose, of finding meaning, came back to me, but it seems that the answers might not be the same anymore. Um, Perhaps it's probably because I've seen more, I've experienced more, I struggle with more things. It might probably because that I might not have the same energy as I was when I was when I was younger. So I've yet to truly find the answers to these questions. Maybe my first question to you, Anne, is what about you? As you enter the age of seniority, become a senior citizen in a few months' time, how much of that question remains relevant to you? And do you think that do you ask the same questions? And do you think the answers have changed now that you're becoming older than when we were first grappling with these questions?
Um, I will get to your question, but first, can I just say this moment in itself is like an answer to your question? Because here I am sitting in front of you. We've known each other for give and take 35, 40 years. And as you said, you're 61. And by God, you're starting a podcast. So, there in itself is the answer to, I think, your question. This podcast is such a new medium. Um, it's, I think, the parlance of a younger generation than us, but here you are bravely going forth into this new platform, and yet it feels so familiar. It feels like this is just the kind of conversation that we've been having all these 30 years. It just has a different platform now, a different form. So, I mean, all that in itself is already an answer to your question. I don't think I ever stopped asking the question. You're right that at the very in our 20s we were asking this question. And I think I constantly asked it, and maybe it's because of the way we were brought up, we were the formation that we went through, the Ignatian background that we've had, constantly asking ourselves, where is God calling me, and how can I make a difference in the lives of other people? So that has never left. It's always been there. But at 60, or turning 60, for me at least, there are two things. First, the urgency. Suddenly, oh my Lord, if I haven't figured it out yet, I'm running out of time. And so I feel I have to, so there's a part of that I feel I'm running out of time. I gotta make sure I have really achieved what I want to achieve. I think moving into 60, I felt like that. But stepping into this year of 60, I suddenly feel, how do I put it? I suddenly feel stop running. I suddenly feel like the answer is not out there. And maybe in connection to what you're saying, what I find, you're right, the quality of the answer is different. The answer is not out there. And I'm no longer looking at external signs or what the world, well, yes, I'm still looking at the world's greatest need, but I'm also more guided by some urging inside that's telling me, you already know, you it's just time to let go of the inhibitions that have been, that we didn't, that I think what the gift of turning 60, turning this age, is wala na akong pakialam kung what people will say, or I have nothing much to prove anymore, or nobody really cares. That, not like when we were in our 20s, there was so much to prove. Now I think it's a matter of, yes, there's a new freedom na I don't need to conform as much. And this is a new learning, Louie. I can't say I've got it all together now, but I have a new learning that it's already here, whatever it is, whatever my purpose is. It's long been here. I just really need right now to let go of all the inhibitions, the sense of propriety, the fears of getting it wrong. I just need to let that go now, because if I get anything wrong right now, who cares? I'm 60 years old. So I'm getting a taste of that freedom. I don't have it yet, honestly, but I'm getting a taste that I think the answer is more inside, and the call is to let it out.
Yeah. I'm struck by what you said. You know my history. I was a Jesuit. I was a priest. I was in the seminary for 4 years, and I do remember during that moment when I was discerning about what I want to, in the whole notion of the call, or making a difference. If I remember right, during that particular moment in my life, it was, what should I be? It was a question of doing. It was a question of vocation in relation to maybe a title, or a profession. But I think part of how I'm evolving, it's not, you're coming from what you're saying, it's not out there. It's not a question of doing, but a question of being. It's a question of what is it within me that is being called for, to be able to say that I'm making a contribution out there in the world. And because of what I've been through, the what, meaning what I should do, is not as important as the why and the who of who I am as a person. And it's probably, as you were saying, getting a bit more comfortable with myself, and getting to be more comfortable with my own strengths and my own weaknesses and my own limitations as a person, and not be fixated to, I have a list of things that I want to do, so forth and so on. And if I don't do that, then I'm not living out to what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if that's something that resonates with what you just said a while ago.
Definitely, the earlier, no, and I have to admit, even in this last, in towards the end of my 55th decade, it was, oh my gosh, I looked at that list, and have I done that list? And like, for example, I'm a writer. So, I've not really written, I feel I've not really written anything that I can claim this is the magnum opus. Pero then suddenly, um, there's the need to do that is not so much so I can achieve, but more so I can achieve something new, something to a new feather on my cap. But it's more, if I want to write a book now, it's to synthesize what we've been through. You get the fine difference. It's not another achievement, but another way to make sense of what has been.
And I don't have an answer to that question for me. My next question to you is, how did that transition, transformation, evolution, how did that come about where, like myself and like you, what you seem to be saying, whereas before, I have to do this, have a list, but now it seems to be more of a question of being and becoming rather than a question of things to do. And honestly, I have to reflect within myself how that transition has happened within me. So I don't know. Do you have an idea on why that transition has happened or is happening to you? Siguro sa akin, sorry. Sa akin, I think it's partly a certain level of modesty, humility, or parang I'm not as, how do I put it? I've become more accepting of the fact that I cannot do all of those things, and that's perfectly fine. And yet, if I just look at myself, that if I'm going to look at the arc of my life and the things that I have tried to do and the kind of difference I've tried to make, there seems to be a theme to it that I can say to myself, at some point I have been able to make a difference, despite the fact that there are many things that I yet have to do and have not done in my life. And being comfortable with it, that's perfectly fine and with little judgment on myself. I don't know how you answer that question.
First of all, okay. First of all, you've reached me at the time when I've just come from a retreat. So maybe my answer to you, a spiritual retreat, which I intended to take to start the year, and what a lot of the change in thinking happened during that retreat. I want to tell you the story in a way, in a short way, but in a powerful way. But maybe the simple way is that to explain it is during the retreat, I had an opportunity to watch the 21-year-old me. And she was experiencing things for the first time. To be concrete, she was experiencing being out with somebody, with a guy, a really cute guy, for the first time, and really being caught up in a conversation with this guy who was fascinating and kind and so captivating. And we really hit it off, and we talked through the night up to the morning. I mean, isn't it magical? Through the morning. And then he leaned towards this 21-year-old girl. And this 21-year-old girl, that was me, pulled away. And I saw her do that, and I said, "Oh my God, what a nerd you were. And I realized how trapped she was in, all her thoughts were, I have to do the proper thing. I don't want him to think I'm loose. What am I supposed to do? All the things that people might say or my mother would say. And all those things started coming back to me. And I felt sorry for my 21-year-old self. And I thought, now turning 60, I don't have to be so trapped in all the social norms that the 21-year-old had to put herself through. But I don't mean, and because it was a spiritual retreat, no, I said, Lord, are you telling me to go wild now that I'm 60? Um, and he said yes. And it doesn't mean being, letting go of my morals, but it simply means being true to that intuitive, that spontaneous, that energetic, that freshness that has been inside. And even if I'm 60, that freshness is still there and will not be allowed anymore to be saddled, strapped down by all this decorum. So now I understand, Louis, why women of my age color their hair purple. Just you wait. I will color my hair red or purple because we're free now. We're free now to do that. So I think that was the point of transformation, that there's no one to please anymore. There's no pressure to fit in, no pressure to be of a certain mold. So then there's freedom at this age. And lucky for us at this age, we still have energy, and the mind is still there working. So I feel really like it's a new resurgence, a new life. So if I was gonna talk to that 21-year-old, I said, "Come on, girl, lean in, just savor the moment, savor the affection of the moment. Don't worry about what it all means to anyone else who's watching, but lean in, and it's okay." So that's what I want to do now: is lean into my intuition, lean into to joy, to the spontaneous, not be afraid.
You mentioned liberating, fresh, invigorating, growth, newness. But not everyone who grows old have that stance in life. We know many old people who've turned cynical, who've turned bitter, who have pulled away from the joy of life, who are afraid of venturing into anything new, who are stuck to the old ways of doing things and totally refuse anything that is new. And I think it's also something to do with what I sometimes struggle with, the whole notion of hope. I was reading the book of Patricia Evangelista. Some people need killing, and I was totally floored by her her chronicling of the drug war during the time of President Rodrigo Duterte and how many people had been killed under that particular program. And part of my reaction was there's so much evil in the world. And when you take a look at what's happening in the Middle East, in Gaza, and the different wars that are happening all throughout history, and the little that I have done, and it seems that despite all the good things that good people are doing and have done, it seems that are we making a difference? It seems that the world seems to be in a much worse situation than it was when we were younger. And sometimes, personally, I struggle with that. The whole notion of, is there hope for the humankind? Is there hope for the world? And because in my simple mind, if there's no hope, why even try? Which might lead one to reach a conclusion, well, then perhaps all of this making a contribution, making a difference, finding your purpose is futile. Because if you look around if you look around us, there seems to be little to be hopeful for, in the context that there remains to be a lot of bad things that are happening in the world. So maybe that's part of what I wanted to ask you. Where do you anchor that capacity that you're talking about for freshness, for joy, for continue to making a difference, of reaching out to the newness of life despite we're not, we've been exposed to all of these things during our 60 years or so of life. It's not as if when we were younger we were kind of naive, perhaps, and we were not yet as exposed then to the evil of the world. Now, both at the personal level, we know what it means to be betrayed, to be hurt, both at the individual personal level and the collective level. Where do you draw your capacity, as you were talking about, for freshness, for joy, for hope? Where does that, where do you draw that from?
First of all, I can't say that I know more than that I know more than those who have become bitter. I can't say that. I can't say that I am bitter proof right now. I can't say that. Um, Second is so two stories I want to say is that I talked to I don't know if you know him, attorney Jake Lopez, Almeda Lopez, who was the general, this is just a small story to illustrate, who was the general manager of ABS-CBN in the 1960s. I happened to be talking to him because that's the kind of writing that I was doing. I was a corporate, I was an editor, and I did corporate histories. So I was interviewing him about the ABS-CBN and the closure of ABS-CBN in 2020.
For our audience who are not Filipinos, ABS-CBN is the one of the biggest media network television station in the Philippines.
And it was shut down in 2020. Its franchise was denied, and the dominant belief at that time was because the Duterte administration would not give them the franchise because they were critical of the administration. Long story short. So I got to interview him weeks after. So this is a man who went through the beginnings of the creation of that channel in the 1950s, and then to have it shut down by martial law, and they had to escape, exile. He was put in jail and eventually let out of jail, and he helped in the escape of Henry Lopez, who was the owner. They moved to the US, and then 1986 they came back and they rebuilt, and now it's taken away from them again. So I was interviewing this man just a few days after they shut down, and I expected a very bitter, angry man because what, are we gonna do this again? How could it have happened? And I said, Attorney Jake, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. He said, aren't you upset? Oh, he said to me, I've seen it. I've seen this cycle. I've seen this cycle. It's just really like that. In politics, you're up, you're down. He meant politics. But I think he meant about life, that he's seen enough about life to know that what seems so unbearable at this moment can pass. And you'll rise again, and then maybe something unbearable will happen again, but it will pass, and then you'll rise again. So I thought that's wisdom in this man, that he, and I think maybe that's what age, he was in his 90s, but maybe that's what age gives us, certainly. I mean, not to belittle the pain, the horror of what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in Gaza, not to belittle that. But that's certainly not the first war that we've been horrified by in our lifetime. So I guess I draw from that. Not to belittle the horror, I am as horrified as you. Patricia Evangelisto's book, I cannot read straight. It's just, I have to, it's horrifying. But, and there is that cycle of knowing that at some point it will mean something, It does not justify, but then what it gives me, going back to your questions, where do I draw it from? That gives me a kind of expansiveness to not be all consumed by it. The other thing is really that I'm a Zen practitioner, and that I've been a Zen practitioner for 22 years. So, and that it is about being in the moment. And so I believe that this conversation with you, and it's just the two of us, if I'm fully present to you, can change whatever it is out there that it's meant to change. So who knows? There's a soul in Gaza, or a family who's lost someone in the drug war. Who knows? Maybe it can be as linear as that this conversation will affect them. But I also believe that if we just send out, this conversation is sending out vibrations that is not violent, that is not angry, then it kind of, neutralizes that which horrifies us. If we create these pockets of
I'm,
hope.
I'm really struck by what you're saying right now, where I think part of the subtext of my conversation is that that by effort of making a contribution should be measured in terms of impact. And if I don't see the impact in terms of changing the world or making a difference, that the effort or the contribution does not matter or matters less. I think what you're saying is the very effort,
Yes.
the very choice to keep on trying to make a contribution to the world, regardless of whether or not there's an impact or you see the impact, should not be as important. Because if we believe in the goodness of life, at some point, whatever it is that we do will have some kind of contribution out there somewhere, even if that's a very powerful idea that I've not thought of in the past.
Yeah, even if it's not directly, I'm helping Gaza. And even if it's just the two of us talking and there was no one recording this, I still believe, I still believe that this conversation is at least throwing some energy out in the world that is positive and hopeful.
At the very least, that what you just said has made an impact on me. So in that regard, ano lang, another topic, and this is really about being a parent. Okay, my son Pablo, and whom you know, is 11 years old.
Who I know I love and love.
Yeah, and I do remember my life before him, where I had the greater luxury of doing other things in making a contribution, quote unquote. When I became a father to Paulo, I was very clear in my determination, and this is how I made sense of it. Everything else that I can do, someone else can do. The only thing that no one can do is be a father to Paulo. That whatever it is that I chose to do, someone else can do, whether badly or better than I can. But there's only one person who can be a father to Paulo, and that's me. And to me, it helped distill as well or simplify when I ask the question, what difference did I make in my life? And to my mind, and I'm not sure if everyone agrees with this, because we've had friends who made a different choice altogether, where they have families but they still chose to make a difference somewhere else, and one can say to the detriment of the family. But to my mind, when I became, maybe because I became a father at 50, I think that also made a difference, where You know, at that age, I've done a lot already, and when Paulo came into my life, there's a greater clarity on, at the end of the day, this is the most important contribution I can ever make to this person, and no one else, and everything else became of second priority, or at the very least, that whatever it is I do out there is still in relation to him, making the world a better place so that he can grow up in a better place. So, and you are a mother of 21-year-old boy as well. And maybe the question is with regard to that. How reconcile? How do you bring together you being a mother and you making a difference out there in the world that might not have anything to do with the fact that you're a
Wow. Um, can I shift that question a little bit? It's how do I reconcile my being a mother and like you having decided that this child and being a mother to this child will give me purpose. It was the one that will make it worth waking up in the morning, worth sacrificing for our job, worth giving up whatever ambitions, whatever, time with friends, because this bringing up this human being is the most important thing. And especially in the early years of being a parent, and you're a parent of an 11-year-old boy, so I can
very
understand.
consuming.
Yes, very time consuming, energy consuming, it's always, you're always treading on fresh ground. You don't know, you don't have a manual for everything that you encounter every day. But at 22, when your son is 21, or like my son is turning 22 now, suddenly they don't need you.
As much. Or not in the same way that they would needed you when they were 11 perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, they are a completely formed human being already at 21, 22. And their natural development process is to individuate from you, is to push you away. And you've wrapped, and I had wrapped myself in that sense of purpose. So, yeah, now to change gears and say, oh, it's time to let you go. That's a whole emotional battle that's um, difficult to now say, I have to believe that you're ready. And as much as I think the world out there is not where I want, not in the condition that I want to release you in. And in fact, my son, who is very articulate and thinks a lot about these things, he says your generation really ruined. Of course, he uses that F word, but your generation really ruined things for us, and well, yeah, that's true. But uh, but it's not our role to protect. It's not my role to protect him anymore, or to. So that's going into the senior years. That's a major shift, and I think the what I have to relearn is how now to direct that sense of purpose that used to be anchored to the bringing up of my son, and how now not to, may tendency when we're young to grade ourselves according to how our son, our child is turning out, but to say now, no, we never should have done that to begin with, and to learn now to step back and see, oh, what a guy, to meet him where he is. My tendency is to say, I didn't, maybe I should have done this, maybe I shouldn't. Did I really prepare you? I'm not sure. Insane things like, do you really know how to eat in a formal setting and lose and get lost in that frivolous thing and lose sight of this wonderful, yes, but angry man, but yet articulate and reflective and so tuned. You know, the young people today are so attuned to their emotions and so articulate about it in a way that we never were. So sometimes I miss out on that because I'm focusing on crazy things and I make it about me because I've lost my role in bringing him up. And so my tendency is to, to try to assert my. So going back to your original question, is I'm going back to questions when it's time to let go of our kids. Where's the purpose? And I think the purpose has always been there. It's just curtailed by parenting obligations and social expectations. Now we're free.
Yeah. And I think part of what I'm hearing from you, Anne, is that even that as a parent, our own notion of what is the role of being a parent to finding our sense of purpose also evolves as our children grow. And my own understanding of being a father to Paulo when he's 11 at the moment will evolve when he becomes reaches 20 or 21. So that's another takeaway that I've gotten from you and my.
Yeah, and who he is at 21 may not look like what you imagine him to be while he's 11. If you're projecting to the 21, Paulo, when you get to 21, it might not look at all like what you imagine.
Yeah, you were saying a while ago when we were having this conversation that our children raise us as well, that we're not the only one raising them. We are, I think, more than 20 minutes, and I'm sure we could still talk about this particular topic at many levels. But I've said this in the previous episodes where, this is not really to convince people about our positions. We are not here to evangelize or to proselytize or to insist that our position or our views is the only way of looking at things as we become older. I think it's really my own what drove me here is I'm grappling with questions that are real to me and I feel that there might be people out there, some of our listeners, who are actually grappling with the same questions. And I'm hoping that these kinds of conversations, this kind of talk might not necessarily give you the answers, but make you feel that you're not the only ones grappling with these questions and hopefully make you less alone. Okay? So at the end of each episode, whenever we have a guest, we will be asking our guests 6 questions that can either be answered by yes or no or by one word. And this is our way of trying to recap the episode. So Anne will allow us 6 questions. Okay? More rest or more work?
Rest.
Excited or scared?
Excited.
More questions or more answers?
More questions. But driven by curiosity because parang I'm more curious now. Less afraid to ask the questions.
Becoming senior is
Liberating.
finding my sense of purpose as I get older is
Um, is a synthesis, is an affirmation that God's been traveling with me and it's our chance to recap.
I see my future self as.
Wild.
With that, Anne, thank you very much.
Thank you, Louie.
Thank you again for being the first person to guest in this particular podcast. And anything last words that you want to say to our listeners?
Again, oh, well, to you, I want to say keep going. This is fabulous that you're spending The initial years of your senior years, reaching out to others. That's so you, Louie. And what's so you also is living life's questions.
If ever you're in San Pablo City, please visit sa Casa Pablo because it's such a healing place. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again. Bye. For our next episode on Senior Moments with Louie Montalbo, I found myself being triggered by some of the questions I was preparing to discuss with you and with our guests in particular. Do you think that's an important conversation to be had to break away from the fear or the discomfort of talking about dying and what preparation should be done in relation to that?
Well, I think because of my experience with my dad, no, the family's experience with our dad, where it was so sudden and it just happened, and the way it changed and affected our lives. Handwritten, several pages, and then I kept it. It's still with me, actually. And then a certain part of it was what to do with her in case, there's some kind of a medical decision that we had to do. Being prepared is one thing, but then when it happens, that's also a different thing, because you would have to grapple with that decision in your lifetime.